And if Russia brought war to our land and they have to pay for this war, in any case, one of the ways to pressure on them, and by the way, they're afraid very much, that Europe will make this union decision. And of course, one of the way is to use frozen assets. And between us, not only on humanitarian things. Yes, because they attack us. We need to defend. That's why, as I said, that we are today can be closely to this great decision to use frozen assets in one or another way.
Let's turn back now to our ever-diligent international affairs editor, Doug Herbert. Doug, you and I were listening to Zelensky's speech on set together just a moment ago. Tell me, what for you were his main takeaways?
He doesn't have the weapons he needs, and he doesn't have the money he needs. And not trying to be flip. That's essentially the main takeaways, but those have been the main takeaways for months now. This is not a new narrative. He's also locked in this sort of eternal vicious circle of having to be eternally grateful to everyone for doing everything they can, especially when it comes to the Europeans, pulling it all together, stepping up to the plate, deal after deal, the Europeans trying to come up with ways to throw Ukraine a lifeline. Look, the main driver here is the fact that all roads lead back to the decision by Donald Trump's administration shortly after Donald Trump took office back in January to essentially roll back the support that the U.S. had been giving to Ukraine, the direct support. In its place, they've implemented in the past few months this program under which the Europeans are supposed to buy weapons from U.S. stockpiles, and then the Europeans give those weapons on to Ukraine. Sounds good on paper. The fact of the matter is it still leaves Ukraine far short of the types of stuff it needs. Yes, we've been talking in recent days about the Swedes signing a long-term, contract to supply Gripen fighter jets, a new supersonic fighter jet. Those are obviously going to help in aerial defense. We have a lot of drone cooperation agreements and other types of missile and artillery and ammunition agreements. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, it all leads back to the U.S. In the absence of that hardcore U.S. support, the U.S. reining in its support. Zelensky time and again is going to be up against it with the European Union, with the Europeans, no matter how beneficent, no matter how generous they are, no matter how much goodwill they have, no matter how much they say that they are there standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Everyone is aware of the fact that they need Trump on board. And there were several moments in that press conference where he was asked specifically by a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, how much are you convinced that, Donald Trump won't change his mind again? Do you have any sense of assurance that this policy of Donald Trump's right now, the new sanctions imposed, all this, are they going to stay the course, the U.S.? And Zelensky was quite transparent, quite honest about it. He said what a lot of people would have said in response to that question. I don't know. He doesn't know. Everyone has to hope. They have to, sort of pray, hold their hands together. But it's true. This is a very, very, I'll add another very, very heavy lift without the U.S. on board getting the money. Which would lead you, I would presume the next question's about that assets. Yeah, yes. The money. So I said, they're the weapons. The money issue. He did, by the way, say we don't have the Tomahawks, right? He was asked. He said, we have sanctions. I still don't have the Tomahawks yet, he
Maybe
said.
Tomorrow,
Maybe tomorrow. Yeah, yet, he said. And he was happy that that planned meeting between Trump and Putin without Ukraine being there has been called off, the one that was planned for Budapest, Hungary. Those were good parts. This money, why are we talking about the frozen assets again, and why here, why now? We've been talking about this idea endlessly for the past Europeans, almost since the outset of the war. When the war began, we know what happened after the full-scale invasion, hundreds of billions of euros in assets, both what's called sovereign, that is state assets by Russia, but also private assets were frozen, not just here in Europe, but in a lot of countries, Canada, the UK, Japan, most of it, though, here in Europe. Some of it was in the form of private assets, like I said, right? They were like villas, fancy villas on the Riviera. They were yachts at sea. They were private bank accounts. But a big chunk of that is all just by happenstance in this clearinghouse, as we heard Armin Georgian reporting from Brussels earlier, in a clearinghouse in Belgium called Euroclear. It's about 2/3 of all of that Russian frozen asset money is in that account. And almost all of that is the money they're being proposed to give to Ukraine in the form of what they're calling a reparation loan, right? 140 billion euros. So the misnomer here, you say frozen assets. This is not about, and a lot of people think it's about, confiscating that money, basically taking it out of Russia's vault and saying, we're taking your money, it's ours now. It's not exactly that. What it is the Europeans drawing a loan, a reparation loan to Ukraine based on those funds held in that Brussels clearinghouse. Based on those funds, there's the understanding that Brussels has to get the money back, right? Euroclear has to get its money back, which is where we talk about these guarantees. They're like, how do we know that you're going to make good on this? Okay, take the 140 billion. We want that 140 billion back. The sort of assumption here, a reparation loan, is that, well, once the war is over, Ukraine will be able to pay back this loan based on money from reparations that Russia pays to Ukraine. Now, you might see...
quite speculative.
Very speculative. And from where we stand today, you might add, not just speculative, it ain't happening. There is no world right now in which Vladimir Putin is going to say, sure, once the war is over and the peace is signed, we pay those reparations to Ukraine and we'll make good on that Belgian loan. So that's why it's not controversial for nothing. It's controversial because a lot of people are saying, well, we want hard proof. We know where the money is going to come from, because it's a supposition that Russia might pay reparation loans, but it's also highly likely it won't. Where's the money going to come from? It has to have guarantees. That's why they're talking about it. Zelensky needs the money. He needs it actually yesterday, but he tried to put a brave face on it. He says we need it by the beginning of next year, by next year, ideally by the beginning of next year. Literally that, to finance weapons purchases and also his economy.
Wow. Douglas, Herbert, thanks for the dose of realism in all of this. Appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on set with us.